Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at ComputerAmerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@ComputerAmerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and I hope all of you are doing well because we have a show planned for you that I think you're really going to like. Where today's entire program will be dedicated to our consumer electronics expert, Ms. Sandy Berger. And yeah, we love having her on talking about devices that you are probably shopping for all the time and, just looking at. And, we definitely focus on things like printers and peripherals and things like that. But today, it's going to be all about streaming. And because, let's face it, I think a lot of people, even if they still have cable, so many people are still turning to streaming devices because, I see it all the time, like where I stream primarily everything that I watch. But then I, kind of watch my parents and they have traditional cable. And even though they have a DVR, so much of what they watch is not time shifted. They're subject to whatever the guide says that they are allowed to watch. And, I can tell they're starting to get frustrated. So a lot of you, even if you have cable, you are still looking at streaming devices. So today is going to be all about those. And we also have some news stories relevant to that. So with all that being said, a couple of things before we get started with Sandy, including ComputerAmerica.com. That will have everything from a link to our guest website or any articles that we do, anything that we talk about. Everything will be in one place for you to go check out after the program. And we call those the show notes. And while you're there, be sure to check out the Computer America contest brought to you by Logitech and the live video stream brought to you by OWC. So all that and more. We also have a couple reviews coming up at our website. So, okay, everyone, let's go ahead and get started with Sandy. So, as I said before, runs Compukiss.com, writes for many publications, and all around has been in the tech industry for for a while. So she's a veteran, and always happy to have her on the program. So, Sandy, how you doing? Welcome on to Computer America.
Hi, Ben. I'm doing fine. Glad to be here today.
I am happy that you were able to make it as well. So, before we get started, let's go ahead and give the people what they want. Tell us a bit of your background, what you're up to, what you're doing, and your take on tech.
Oh, well, my take on tech could go on forever and ever. I'll tell you a quick story. And then the reason I say that, because when I wanted to, 20 years ago, I wanted to write a tech column in the local newspaper. And the paper editor said to me, well, what could you possibly write about? And he threw me a pad of paper and a pencil and said, give me an idea of what you could write about. And after I got to the second page, he said, okay, you can write the column. But today I could go through 100 pages because tech has completely infiltrated our lives. Just about anything and everything you want to talk about now has some tech edge to it. So it's absolutely amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, you go to any of the big conventions. I know that we met out at CES, and just like especially CES, you see that it's not just keyboard and mice people, but their cars, telemedicine, security systems. Everything is just technology. So I think you're right. I mean, in terms of topics, there is never a shortage to talk about. So, so why don't we go ahead and get talking about our topic today, which, as we mentioned, was all about streaming devices. Tell us your relationship with streaming devices. How long have you been using them? Do you actually like them? Just some background on streaming devices.
I absolutely love streaming devices. I have been using them since the first ones came out. I have used the Fire TV, the Chromecast, the Apple TV, Just about Roku, just about every one of them I have used, and so I have my favorites. But then there are streaming devices that are better for some people than for other people. So there's a lot to know about all these streaming devices, the apps that go with them, and should you really cut the cable? This is the big question now. Um, Cutting the cable, of course, means getting rid of cable TV. And you mentioned, Ben, that your parents still have cable TV,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
and they're getting a little frustrated with it. Well, I still have cable TV, but I have right now what I consider the best of all worlds. I subscribe to a basic package on cable TV, which happens to be Spectrum, which is the only uh, company that I can get right here in
Yeah.
Pinehurst, North Carolina. Um, so I subscribe to a basic package there. And then I add Netflix, Hulu, and anything else that I want. And that actually comes out the cheapest because I also bundle my internet service with Spectrum. Now, if I was to cancel my TV service with them, then my internet service gets more expensive. So, it's kind of the best of all worlds, and I watch both constantly.
And
So,
that immediately brings up the question of, do you think that that's fair? Because obviously the cable companies, they know that a portion of their revenue is kind of mixing with cable, or not, a portion of their revenue is moving from cable to internet. And the fact that, as you just said, if you were to cancel your cable subscription altogether, your internet gets more expensive, which kind of doesn't really make sense, because they've switched over from aux or whatever to completely digital. It's all served over the same line kind of deal. It's not like they have to do anything. Just real quick, I mean, do you think that that's fair that they are charging you more for providing you less service?
no, it's not fair at all. But then, since when do these companies have to be fair?
Okay.
And when we talk, maybe toward the end of the show, we'll talk a little bit about what's going on with consolidation of all these things and how that's going to affect our costs. And we can get into that a little bit deeper.
Yeah, there have been a couple of mergers that I think people have, of course, been paying attention to, because whenever a company throws around, oh, I don't know, a couple tens of billions of dollars, it's
Right.
worth noting. So yeah, we'll definitely talk about the providers and things like that later. But let's stick to the streaming devices. And to be clear, we are talking about a number of devices. You listed them here. If you're watching the video portion, I found this great article from CNET where they kind of review everything from the Roku to the Apple TV. But you wanted to talk about the Fire TV, Apple TV, 4K, Chromecast, Roku. That's already 5. There are numbers. And I think a little bit later, we're also going to talk about the different services, because you mentioned Netflix, Hulu, Amazon has their own YouTube. So
Right.
let's start with hardware first.
Okay.
Go for it.
Well, hardware is streaming sticks and streaming devices, and basically they hook generally into the HDMI port on your TV and connect to your wireless network, and then you can stream content. Now, if you have an older TV, there are some ways to use different cables to hook up, but the easiest and best thing is to have a TV with an HDMI port on it.
Which isn't that hard. I would say any TV that doesn't weigh about 80 pounds should
That's a
have
good
HDMI.
good way to put it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
anything recently new, and they do have adapters where you can go from like the red, yellow, white to HDMI. But anyways, so any modern TV, HDMI, and I mean, just in just through your experience, is it best to also have a good Wi-Fi throughout your house?
Definitely. You definitely need a stable Wi-Fi service that gives you a pretty good downstream so that you can actually download all these movies without it. If you don't have enough bandwidth, what happens is it stops, it pauses, and it will absolutely drive you crazy. Now, if you have an internet service that's like that, there's a couple things you can do. One is you can go to your cable or your internet service provider and up the speed, which you'll pay a little bit more for. The other thing is if you just have a kind of crummy service, you can hook most of these devices up to an Ethernet port.
Hmm.
So therefore, you can hook it right up to your router, and yes, it will require having a cable, but it's worthwhile to do if you have a crummy service and you're trying to not do wireless.
Absolutely. So, and before we even talk about the individual devices again, uh, I know that obviously we're going to be talking about, let's say Apple, for instance, and Apple's best known for their iOS ecosystem, blah, blah, blah. My point is, smartphones, are they required? Because a lot of them come with like little remotes that are pretty basic, but a lot of them also have apps that tie in with them that can be done through tablets and smartphones. Would you recommend someone have either a smartphone or better yet, a tablet to help with their streaming experience?
It's really not necessary in most cases. The only case that I know of that it's really, really necessary is with the Apple TV, because Apple is such a closed ecosystem. And it's a good ecosystem. I like Apple TV. I get really good service from it. But you have to have an iOS device to even start this, to install it.
Hmm.
So you have to have an iPhone or an iPad, and if you don't, you might as well just take the Apple TV right back to the store.
That is
So
good to note. Yeah.
yeah, that's something that now the new Apple TV that just came out, which has 4K, and it has Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos, which are improved picture, improved sound, very, very nice. But again, pricier than most. They range from $179 to $199. So Apple TV is one that, if you're a big Apple fan, go for it. If not, you're going to skip down to the next one, which might well be the Amazon Fire TV.
So,
Have you had any experience with that, Ben?
the only experience I have is with Roku, Apple TV, and Chromecast. So, unfortunately, I've not tried that one yet. But I will say, kind of before moving on, is that I mean these numbers that we're throwing out here, 100, 100, almost $200, mid hundreds, like they sound like a lot, but then you also have to kind of talk about the services that you might be replacing. You mentioned that you had a basic package through your cable provider. Um, if you were to get all the bells and whistles, if you got like HBO and the premium channels and sports and so on and so forth, you might be paying, 100, 120, 150 bucks, depending on what you get through your
Right.
cable company. So like a month of television watching at its best gets you, one of these devices. And of course there's other costs to be added in monthly, but I mean, you might save money, or you probably should save money if you, kind of do what we're talking about, correct?
Yes, you might. At least right now you might, but in the future it might get
Right.
pricier. But the Apple TV is the priciest one out
Right.
there at like $200. And again, you don't have to have that priciness, because the Fire TV, the Chromecast, they're all in the $40 range.
Right.
Like the Fire TV stick is $40. Roku is
Roku, I'm
Roku's
looking
50,
like
I think.
50, yeah, 50 at Amazon, and so like 50, 70, 60, somewhere
Right.
in that area. So not too expensive. And another thing, you mentioned this 4K HDR. I love throwing out these acronyms. Essentially, should people worry about these acronyms if they know that their TV doesn't have them? Because right now you can go out, you can buy a 4K TV, you can buy a 4K HDR television, with Dolby Vision, things like that. Should people try to buy the streaming device that best matches their television, or should they just go ahead and try to future-proof themselves and get the best streaming device that they can afford?
Well, the way I look at it is, if someone has purchased a 4K TV with HDR, which is a better picture, and Dolby Atmos or Dolby Vision, which are, sound quality,
Mm-hmm.
then to get the full benefit out of it, yes, you should purchase a streaming device that matches those features.
I gotcha.
And Amazon has just come out with a new one called the Fire TV Cube. That's 4K Ultra, it's HDR, it's Dolby Atmos, it's $120. And there might be specials coming up on the Prime Day, which is next week. So that's an interesting way to do it. Now, the Fire TVs and the Fire TV Cube, different prices, but they all have Alexa built in, which is really, really excellent. But the Cube doesn't have, matter of fact, none of them have Alexa calling or messaging, multi-room music, or Bluetooth connections yet.
So
Now, they say those things are coming.
Right, and I'm sure that they will. A lot of these, as we've mentioned before, they get better with software updates. So if it doesn't have functionality now, it can have functionality later. I'll just say real quick, one problem, I don't quote unquote problem, is that I stream so much video, I really don't get commercials. Like I have an ad blocker on my browser. I recommend everyone does. I stream a lot of my video, and I don't get commercials. When did they announce the Fire TV Cube? This is literally the first time I'm even hearing about it.
It came out about 2 to 3 weeks ago.
Okay. So I'm not too far behind.
No, you're not. And when you talk about videos, I don't know if you watch YouTube videos, but that is a problem with these Amazon TVs. Sometimes these big companies, they just don't play nice with each other. And there's been a lot of bad blood between Amazon and Google. So there's no official YouTube app on any Fire TV right now. And this varies. Sometimes they put it back on when they get friendlier, and sometimes they take it off.
Right, and to be clear, there's bad blood between. Let's see, there's been some strife between Amazon and Google, some strife between Amazon and Apple, some strife between Apple and Google. Essentially, everyone doesn't want to play too nicely with each other, because if they offer the service of another competitor, they feel like they're kind of giving in. So you're right. The services that are included come and go, and so with that being said, though, the Fire TV Cube, very interesting. I mean, this is another part that we haven't really mentioned yet. You mentioned that you can voice control your streaming devices. This is something I think you can do with Siri as well through Apple TV.
Right.
Not so much Chromecast yet, but digital assistants. Is that something that's cumbersome, clunky, don't even worry about it? Or do you find it cool enough that it's like, Amazon Alexa is so cool on the TV, you should maybe lean towards that?
Well, I think if you have an Amazon Echo, or you have a Chromecast, or you have a Google Home, you should maybe go in that direction, just because it is fantastic. I mean, these devices, you can say, turn the television on, and it will turn the television on. You can say, increase the volume, decrease the volume, change to a certain channel. And in most cases, you don't even have to know the channel number. You can say, turn to CNN or turn to Fox News, and it actually adjusts to the proper input and then changes the station for you, which is one of the main problems with all these streaming devices, is you have to have it on at the right input for it to work.
That's been a problem. Like ever since I got my first Nintendo 64, kind of console, and we hooked it up to our living room television, and we annoyed our mom to the point where she's like we would play console, turn it off, and then go to our room, and then she'd yell at us to come back and make the TV work again. Like,
right.
That's been a problem for 25 years. And it's good that they finally are starting to get around to be like, this is a pain point for people. Let's try to fix it. That's very impressive, I will say.
It is. And up until now, you really needed a Harmony remote, which works wonderfully.
Yeah.
I have one on my main TV, and therefore you can press a button and it will watch TV, watch a DVD, play a game, do whatever you want. But now, these streaming devices that are voice activated are taking that over, which is really cool.
Very, very cool. And again, just kind of a point that I've been making for a while is that these digital assistants aren't really going to take off because you can't expect everyone to learn the language of a streaming device, but as soon as or I'm sorry, a digital assistant, but as soon as a digital assistant learns to understand human, that will be kind of the tipping point where you can just kind of talk to it like another person and it will understand and do what you want it to do. So that's great. Let's go ahead and let's go ahead and get back to the different kind of hardware. So Apple TV 4K, you mentioned, super expensive. If you're in the ecosystem of iOS, maybe the one for you. We also talked about the Fire Cube and essentially the Amazon offerings. They're pretty good. Are there any features that, let's just take Apple and Amazon so far, any features that kind of one doesn't offer the other? Because I know Apple has AirPlay, which could be something that you want. Amazon ecosystem is huge. Anything kind of really stand out between the two?
Well, it depends on what you want to watch and what you want to do. For instance, the Apple TV, as you stated, has some other features, and it has Bluetooth 5, which is impressive because that Bluetooth 5, if you're going to hook something up through Bluetooth, it gives you a longer range and a better range for Bluetooth. What Fire TVs offer you is better integration with all Amazon video and Amazon audio music. So therefore, you can control everything by voice much better. Now, you can also control things by voice, of course, on the Apple TV. Siri is not as good as Alexa. But on the Roku has their own built-in voice activation and voice search. So I love Roku devices. As a matter of fact, they are probably my favorite out of all of these.
Yeah.
They're user-friendly. They've got thousands of apps. They've got the biggest selection of apps, and they're very, very easy to use. Now, there's a Roku stick, and it goes all the way up to the Roku Ultra. There's 5 different versions that you can purchase. So they're between $50 and $90. And I think you get the most bang for your buck with the Roku devices.
Right. So, and by the way, just this article, I definitely value CNET. They do a lot of good reviews, and just kind of looking at each one of these, and they have their number one choice as the Roku streaming. The Roku Streaming Stick Plus. That's what they kind of recommended. I mean, Roku was one of the originals. I think between actually, it might have been the original streaming device. So they definitely have a lot when it comes to functionality. Like everyone kind of copied Roku, but they don't have any kind of and this may be what kind of makes them so great is that they don't have any kind of first party only available through Roku. Roku just tries to play nicely with everyone as best they can, correct?
Well, up until now.
Oh yeah.
Yes, they have thousands of apps. They have the most apps. They get along with everyone, it seems. But the one thing about the Roku is that they now have a Roku channel. So this is only on Roku devices, and it's kind of a competitor to Netflix or one of those. So they have first run movies and all sorts of things you can watch. Now, the thing to be careful here on the Roku channel, and actually on many other things, is that even though you've paid for the device or you might be paying for the service, you might have to watch ads. So the Roku channel has ads. We'll talk later about services, which are like Hulu has ads. And the thing about that is, Ben, I don't know if you remember when cable first came out. But
No.
when cable first came out, it was a replacement for your regular over-the-air TV. And you had a TV, you had 5 or 6 stations in your area that you watched. Everything was free, but there were ads on the TV. So cable started and said, we're going to take out all the ads. You just pay us a monthly fee. We're going to give you this great programming, and there won't be any ads. Well, everybody knows what happened. The prices just went up and went up, and they started putting ads in. So you talk about being taken advantage of. That is where it's at.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening with a lot of these streaming services. They are inserting ads. Also, some of the streaming apps that you get, for instance, a Hallmark Channel. I have a lot of women in particular who love the Hallmark Channel, and
Of
they don't
course.
want to. They want to be able to stream it. Well, you have to pay an extra fee to get the Hallmark Channel. But if you already have a cable subscription, you can get the Hallmark Channel for free. And there are quite a few channels like this. You can get it for free, but guess what? There's ads on it. So ads are, although like Netflix and Amazon, wonderful, no ads.
Right.
But ads are slowly infiltrating here. And my fear is that we're going to be paying for all these streaming services, and we're still going to be getting as many ads as ever before.
And I'm going to try to Google it here real quick, but they had I don't want to call it like a customer satisfaction survey, but they had the public kind of rate their streaming services, and like Netflix was like the most preferred service between Amazon, Hulu, HBO, and Netflix, and of course just plain cable. And Netflix came out ahead so far. It was like 92% satisfaction rate, and a lot of people attributed that directly to the lack of advertising, the lack of 30-second runs before, after, or during a program.
Right.
The ability to binge watch. And it's like, I kind of get the point of ads. Obviously their costs, cable's costs went up exponentially. No one put a stopper on it. And to kind of slow that exponential rate, they put in ads and only raised it a little bit, as opposed to raising it a lot, without ads. And I guess my question is, and let's see, I think SNL is my kind of go-to example. They recently reduced the number of advertisements during Saturday Night Live, the actual cable performance, and their ratings went up. I'm wondering how long is it going to stay, and I don't want to move on to different streaming services and the ideology and what have you, but I'm wondering how long it's going to take these content providers to realize that people are willing to pay, but they don't like ads. Ads are so anti, getting into the groove of watching something.
You're absolutely right. I just got involved in watching Suits. I don't know if you've watched that at all.
I have. I saw like the first 3 seasons. Great show, and then again, I just kind of dropped cable, so I couldn't watch it anymore.
Okay. Well, it was on Netflix. I know it was on Amazon.
Right.
All 7 series episodes were on Amazon, and I started watching it because of Markle.
Yeah.
Meghan Markle, when she got married and all that. And I said, I wanted to see what she was like. Well, watching it on Amazon with no ads at all was phenomenal. I mean, just a really good streaming experience, that you could watch it that way. But I'm not sure that you're right, that these companies are going to figure out that we want to keep the ads off. Because basically what they're into this for is making money. And if they can make money on the ads, it might become infiltrated in the future. It'll be very, very interesting to see how it goes.
I definitely use the qualifier, I hope, as in I hope that they realize, because more and more people, I don't want to overstate the the amount of people that switch from cable television to a streaming device and quote unquote cut the cable. Honestly, it's not a lot of people. It's like a couple 100,000 as opposed to hundreds of millions who have cable in their house. Like, the numbers aren't really there, but it's a trend, and it's something that is moving in that direction. So I'm afraid that you're right. They're seeing people move, and they're going to be like, we got to get out ahead of this thing. We got to get ads in these streaming services, because they're going to be the dominant player. So when we come back, we're going to finish up the rest of the hardware, and then we are going to talk about the software, the different services, and then we're going to talk about the acquisitions that you mentioned with AT&T buying HBO, Time Warner, things like that. Folks, a lot more here. Computer America, Compukiss, Sandy Berger, everyone, stay tuned.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
There was probably supposed to be a tone there, so something messed up. Either way, welcome back to the Computer America Show. That tone might come in a little bit later. We are talking with Sandy Berger, and we are, of course. Oh yeah, that's gonna actually pop up here in like a minute in the middle of my sentence. But anyway, Sandy Berger, Compukiss, welcome back to the Computer America Show. By the way, if you missed any part of today's program, you can of course check it out wherever podcasts are heard, be it iTunes, Google Play, I was about to say Netflix. I wish, but yeah. So SoundCloud, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, what have you. So, anyways, we continue on. We are talking all things streaming devices, and yeah, with Sandy Berger. So. We started to, of course, trail off into different streaming services. Before we do that, let's wrap up the hardware. We talked a bit about the Roku. The Roku Stick is, of course, great. There are a number of other ones.
Yeah, then the Roku Ultra is the one that I really like. It's $89.99, but worth the extra cost for two features that are really nice. The remote control has a place you can plug in headphones.
Right.
Okay. So if you happen to be watching TV in bed and your partner wants to sleep, you can just plug your earphones into it, which is wonderful. And the feature that I have used a lot is the Ultra has a remote finder. So if you lose the remote control in the cushions of the sofa or under the bed or wherever, you just press a button on the Roku device and the remote beeps and kind of lets you know where it's at. And I think those two features are fabulous.
Absolutely. And I think anyone making that first transition from a cable box to a streaming box, much more traditional to, I think, what they're used to, as opposed to some of these other devices. So we've talked about Roku, we've talked about Amazon, we've talked about Apple. The last one I think on the list that people should kind of know about, and even beyond that, I'm sure that you have a couple more that you could kind of point people to, but Google Chromecast, and that is probably the least user-friendly one, I think, of all these options.
You're absolutely right, because on the Chromecast, for to start with, it's a $35 or $40 dongle, And if you want the 4K Ultra version, it's $70. But you have to have a computer, a laptop, or something that you're controlling. You're actually flipping the picture from your device to the TV. And so it's complex, it's complicated, but guess what?
Hmm.
Google has just made it very, very easy. So I have a Chromecast on my TV and I have a Google Home. All right. Well,
Right.
all I have to do is say, turn the Chromecast on,
Right.
and then I tell it what I want it to play. For instance, I just mentioned Suits. Well, Suits has a very good theme song that I could never understand the words to. So the other day, I said to my Google Home device, Google, would you please play put the lyrics to the Suits theme on my TV?
Right.
And up it pops. Okay, so it's connected to YouTube directly, and YouTube can display lyrics, music, whatever, just with your voice. So if you want a YouTube video, say you want to make bananas Foster, and you just say, Google, go ahead and show me on TV a video of how you make bananas Foster, and it pops up on your TV. Could not be easier.
That is, and that's what I was talking about earlier. You talk to your Google Home device very naturally, and that's the mark of a good digital assistant, where you don't have to know the keywords to get, uh, Google, input this video with this title, blah blah blah. It just kind of works as you want it to. So that's great. And honestly, I don't think that this directly ties in, but I have to say that one of my favorite apps on my phone, and I haven't checked it out if there's any interplay with Chromecast or with any Google Home, but I use this app on my phone called Chrome Remote Desktop, where you get to control your computer with your phone using using the Chrome Remote Desktop. So you can control your entire computer. It's great. You have to install it, verify it, blah, blah, blah. But they recently made upgrades to it that to the point where I can actually stream video from my computer to my phone, and there's no lag, no hiccups, no glitches. I don't know what it is about Google, but they really have this streaming from one device to another down to a science, and I love it.
They do. And Google Home has just added a new feature, which they call convenient conversation. Now, when I tell everybody about this, let me say you have to go into the app on your phone, into the Google Home app, and turn this feature on. But if you do, what will happen is you can talk to Google more comfortably because he listens, or she listens. I have the male voice on mine.
Hmm.
He listens a little bit longer. So you might say, Google, who's the president of the United States? And Google will answer. And if you have this convenient conversation implemented, you can then say, well, how tall is he?
Right.
And Google will tell you. And then you can say, what color is his hair? Or whatever questions you want to ask. And it will actually hold a conversation with you. Google is, as far as that goes, is doing the best on the
Right.
voice activation. Mhm.
Absolutely. No. So, and I'll go ahead and let you have, kind of one more crack at this. We kind of gave like the best use cases for each one of these devices. Are there any other third parties? Because just like digital assistants, I think when it comes to streaming video, I think TiVo is trying to work a product in there as well. We've had a couple of other devices here on the program that have talked about their wares. There's others that don't get as much brand name recognition because, let's face it, it's hard to compete against Amazon, Google, and Apple. Some of the biggest tech companies in the world. But there are other options. Should people pay attention to those? And do you have any kind of off the top of your head that you'd recommend?
Well, I don't have any that I'd recommend, and the reason is because these major ones seem to be better to me than everything else that I've tried. TiVo, of course, has always been good, but they charge a monthly fee.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do is get the monthly fees down. For the most part, that's what people are trying to do anyway. So I'd say, you can try an off brand or an odder brand, and you might be very happy with it, but you also might not. You have to see what kind of communication they've had with all these apps, and that's the reason I like Roku, because they have thousands of apps that you can play on there. You also have to make sure if you have a cable box that it works with the TV streaming device that you get.
Hmm.
For instance, that's one of the features of the new Fire TV Cube. It works with just about every cable box. So if you have a cable box, you also might be doing a TV app. So I stream Spectrum through the TV app. Well, Fire TV right now does not support that app, which is weird because you can get the Spectrum TV on a Kindle, but you can't get it on the Fire TV.
Right.
So you basically have to check out whether you buy a name brand or one of the lesser brands, not only to make sure you get a good deal, but also to make sure it's going to work with what you want to show on it.
Very, very good point. So, all right, and I will say that the only thing I might want to mention hardware-wise before we move on to the different services, hardware-wise, is that if you already have a game console, and I know that a lot of people have an old Xbox 360 laying around, they have a PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, maybe an Xbox One, devices such as these, and I think the Nintendo Switch also, because it has a TV dock, kind of interface. These can, in a pinch, they offer services such as Hulu, Netflix, and other streaming services. So also something to check out if you have one or if you have access to a gaming console. Maybe that could also be a replacement for everything that we're talking about. Price-wise, if you're not a video gamer, if you don't play video games, it's not worth it to buy a $300 console to instead not have to buy a $40, Fire TV. It's but if you have access to one, hey, it can work in a
Well,
pinch.
well, you're absolutely right to mention that, Ben, and especially to mention gaming. I do watch certain things through my Xbox One. So you can watch DVDs, you can watch Hulu, you can watch whatever through that machine. But the other thing about these streaming devices is some are much better at gaming than others.
Hmm.
And that's where the difference between the stick and the larger little device, they're not that big, but the small device comes in. The small devices, for the most part, are much better at gaming. And each one of these, like the Fire TV, has its own game store. Um, Roku has its own game, and Roku is not as big into games as the Fire TV is. So that if you're a gamer or even a casual gamer, is something, if you want to play games on these, Apple has some really cool games on their Apple TV. Um, so basically, it's another thing to take into consideration when you're buying one.
There you go. No, and that's definitely something to check out as well. I mean, honestly, I'm so far into my ego when it comes to video games, but I fully appreciate that some people, they have 10 minutes to kill and they like different kinds of video games. So definitely keep that in mind. All right. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about the different services. I don't think we need to tell anyone, kind of the what Netflix is, but let's just kind of talk about which services people should really kind of consider, because Netflix, as I said, people know about that. But what about, some of the different services offered through Roku? You mentioned there were thousands of apps. What should people keep an eye out for when they get these devices?
Well, the first thing I think to look at is the free apps. There's apples like Crackle, Twitch, Vivo that are actually free and offer a lot of content. But
Oh,
basically,
and I mean, just real quick, Computer America, we're streamed live on Twitch. So, hey, if you want to
see,
watch Computer America, there you go. But yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah, I mean, it's amazing what you can get. And you're going to be, if you haven't gotten into this yet, you'll be totally overwhelmed by the number of stations or channels or whatever you want to call them that there are. Um, but of course, the major ones are Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime, or
Mhm.
Amazon Instant Video, I think is what they call it.
Right.
There's also HBO and a bunch of others that you can get. Now, these are add-ons that will cost you a monthly fee. The Netflix is by far number one. I love Netflix, but I will say it's not the cheapest thing out there
Not anymore.
because
Yeah.
it's $11, $12 a month, and you have to pay extra if you want the 4K movies to come down in 4K. You can watch everything in a regular 1080p, but if you want to have it in 4K, I believe it's $14 a month.
Yep.
Now that monthly fee also includes more screens that you can watch it on at the same time. So if you have 2 or 3 or 4 TVs in your house, you're probably going to want to opt for something where everybody in the family can watch Netflix at the same time if they want to.
That is the part that I think Netflix. Yeah, we have some news about HBO, but Netflix also released, some of their plans for the future. Where you mentioned like the base plan, that's going to be limited to HD, but not 4K. They're limiting. I don't think they're going to limit content, but they're going to limit the amount of screens you can watch on, the quality of the stream that you can watch, and then as you kind of go up the price tiers. I think they're even talking about adding like a $20 streaming option, but like
For HBO?
no
No.
for Netflix
Oh, for
actually.
Netflix. Okay.
Yeah, like
Okay.
so they're not like they're going to add features and then they're going to take some away from the lower tiers, but at the same time, the ability to watch on multiple devices at the same time, like I share one currently with myself and Craig, obviously. So we don't go halvesies. I think he just pays for it. Thank you, Craig. But between the two of us, that's like $10 a person. Or I'm sorry, like $7 a person. That's still supremely affordable for the amount of content that's available through Netflix.
Right, exactly. But the prices are going up slowly,
They
and
are.
this is part of my fear of we're cutting the cable and we're going to all these streaming things, and as the price just keeps slowly moving up, um, Hulu probably is the most cost effective right now because they're at $8 a month for their basic. Amazon Instant Video has just gone up from $99 a year to $119 a year. So they've gone up $20. But Amazon includes a lot of other things like 2 day shipping and free books and all sorts of
And soon
perks.
to be reduced prices at Whole Foods. I mean, Amazon
Right.
Prime. Like I've always treated Amazon Prime Video as like something that you check out once in a while, but honestly, you just have it because you have Amazon Prime. It's a very interesting kind of model that Amazon's building up. But I will say though, at the same time, and man, what was it? I completely forgot my point. Anyways, so Amazon Prime.
You're not old enough, Ben.
I
That's supposed to be a senior's moment, and you're not old enough.
I feel plenty old enough for that moment, but no. The only thing I will say is that Amazon Prime, they do have, or Amazon Prime Video, they do have this thing called a la carte, and that's something that kind of annoyed me when every time I check it out, it's like, oh look, that's a movie I haven't seen. I'd really like to check that out, and it's like, oh, but you have to pay for it, and it's like, why are you offering me movies that I can watch, but then I have to pay for it inside the app that I already pay for? Like the a la carte
Right.
selection, it's annoying.
And that's the way it is on all of these. It's not just Amazon. Netflix has the same thing. You have a certain show you want to see, and you search everywhere through all of these different services, and all you can do is find it for $5 or rent it for $5 or $4 or whatever. And it does seem a little bit aggravating, and it's getting worse. For instance, DirecTV Now. It's a great feature that has a lot of live TV streaming, and it's like about $35 a month, I think is what it was. But guess what? just this week, they announced it's going to go up $5 a month. So it's going to be $40 a month.
Yeah.
This is because of one of these other things that we just started to talk about a little bit anyway, because AT&T has purchased. Who
Nope.
have they
Yeah.
purchased?
AT&T has purchased DirecTV, Time Warner, and yeah.
Yes, they have purchased Time Warner. And before, when they were in court, they said, AT&T said, this is going to lower prices. This is not going to raise prices. And they stated that over and over again. They also stated they were not going to make any changes to HBO, which they now own.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? Within a couple of weeks of the whole thing taking place, DirecTV now has gone up $5 a month, and they have just announced that they are redoing HBO Go and HBO Now.
So, so obviously we don't want to get into any kind of philosophical debate when it comes to types of government, but I will say this is something that can happen when you deregulate and you only go off of I promise not to do X. And it's like if you promise not to do X, then why weren't you comfortable with there being regulations saying that you can't do X if you weren't going to do it in the first place? Instead, they rip it all up and they say we promise we won't. And then, like you said, they raise the rates. And I will say that that's something like that's another article I read that AT&T wants people off of DirecTV. DirecTV is a satellite service. It costs a lot of money to maintain as opposed to running cable to people's homes. Space is expensive. And they want to get people who are on DirecTV off and onto DirecTV Now or whatever.
Now, which is their streaming.
Which is streaming, which is internet, which is cheap. So that's their plan. They want people off of DirecTV and onto DirecTV Now, which eventually I wouldn't be surprised if they rolled into just into AT&T Now or something like that. That's their plan. Like they're changing a lot. And actually we have maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes left. We can actually get into what you think AT&T is going to do with HBO, because that's a very hot topic.
Well, I think what everybody is going to basically is they're going into original programming.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Game of Thrones and Westworld and all of those have been so wildly popular that people right now are willing to pay $14.99 a month for HBO Go or HBO Now. So I don't think that they're going to lower the price that much. They might lower it a little bit for the competition, but they're getting into original content. Okay, so Netflix is doing original content. Amazon is doing original content. Here's the problem with it from the consumer point of view.
Right.
Is that I say I want to watch Suits, which is on Amazon Video, but I'd also like to watch Westworld, which is on HBO, and I want to watch another handmade one that's on Hulu. And suddenly I'm paying approximately $10 a month for 4 different services.
And one that we haven't mentioned yet that will be coming, I really do believe, later in the year, if not next year, because we're hearing so little about it, is the fact that Disney, who now owns Fox, is most likely going to start their own streaming service and pull out of Hulu. So it's going to be Hulu, Netflix, HBO, and Amazon, and Disney on top of that. And let's face it, when it comes to content, Disney has probably the best content out there, with Fox included.
Right. And Hulu right now is owned by Disney, Fox, Comcast, and Time Warner.
Right.
However, several of these have merged. So Hulu is going to change quite a bit because there's different people will have, like right now, at the beginning of it, Disney had 30%, Fox had 30%, Comcast had 30%, and Time Warner had 10%. Well, now if you take somebody and they've suddenly got 60%, that gives them a lot more to say about how things are going with Hulu. So you can expect HBO to change. Hulu is going to change. quite a bit, I think. And how, I'm not really sure. But again, original programming
So
is where it's at.
yeah, so the big concern about the new CEO essentially of HBO through AT&T is that they want to quote unquote compete more directly with Netflix. HBO wants to compete
Right.
more directly with Netflix, and a lot of the language that he used, I think it was either at like an investment thing or a PR thing. Either way, they're saying that we're going to use consumer data and viewing habits and satisfaction surveys, blah blah blah, to tailor make new content that people will be engaged with. And
Right.
the problem with that is that means that HBO, and I mentioned this on the show before, HBO, I think their best programming is when they stick to their motto of, it's not cable, it's HBO. When they don't do what everyone else is doing, when they go out on their own, when they put millions of dollars into a fantasy, kind of genre such as Game of Thrones, and then they take the world by storm. Like, that's the HBO that people love. Are people going to love an HBO that produces stuff that, technically everyone else is already doing?
Well, we have to wait and see. But when I talk about original programming, they're putting tons of money into this. Netflix is expected to spend $13 billion
Yeah.
this year for original programming. So, say HBO matches that to try to take consumers away from Netflix, they might actually be promoting a spectacular programming of some sort. They might be putting a lot of money into one programming versus the other. So you might get another Game of Thrones. I don't know how it's going to come out, except that I can tell you the consumer is going to be paying more money for all of these things as we
Right.
go on.
Right.
So, we start getting away from cable so that we can save some money, but it's not necessarily going to be like that.
Although if I know Netflix, about 10 billion of that 13 billion is probably going to go to another 5 Adam Sandler movies. So we can count that. But no, and I will say that Amazon doesn't want to be left behind either. I think they paid some incredible amount of money to get the rights to make a Lord of the Rings television series, kind of like Game of Thrones. So Amazon is working on it as well. HBO. The only thing I worry about is that AT&T gets too into the data and too far away from, actually doing compelling television. So that's what I'm worried about there.
Going to be extremely interesting to watch as we go. One thing that I did want to mention, I do like DirecTV now, even though the price has just gone up there. It's very good. Hulu right now has one called Hulu Live TV.
Mm-hmm.
And you can watch live TV on a bunch of different devices. It does have some limited commercials. But other than that, for $39, $40 a month, you can also record live TV. And a lot of these companies are going toward that, where you buy a package from me and I'm going to give you cloud storage for 50 hours or whatever. And you could be able to record your TV shows, your live TV shows.
That is, and honestly, like I said, my parents are still on cable, and one of their biggest fears, and that's why I said, kind of buy the highest subscription of Hulu that you can. They like live television. They like, kind of new content. And so I say, get Hulu. They have like next day runs. You're not going to be that far behind. I wanted to ask you real quick, what's the best service/streaming device to get live news, like, the evening news?
I think right now it's Hulu Live TV, but DirecTV now also has live news.
All right.
So it's just like watching cable TV, basically. And it used to be that sports were way on the side and you couldn't get any sports through streaming. Well, things are changing there too. You can get a lot more sports, and of course there's MLB that you can subscribe to on the side, or football, or whatever you want. So it's getting better. Again, my fear are two things. One, it's getting pricier for the consumer, and two, that eventually most of these places might go with ads, and
Well,
I don't want to see that. I hope you're right, Ben, that
And-
they won't do that.
And Sandy, by the way, my senior moment, as he called it, I remember I was going to say it's going to be okay. Someone's going to bundle all of the streaming services together, and they're going to offer you one simple subscription cable package. So let's hope that happens. But in the meantime, everyone, we're flat out of time. Sandy, thank you so much. Everyone, again, Compukiss.com. Check it out. Link to it in the show notes. Sandy, we're out of time, and I want to say thank you for for accommodating us. And hey, catch you next month.
Interesting topics.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Have a great one. Bye bye.